For HomeLinks 3.7, we're going to be comparing and ordering more fractions. The strategy that we learn for ordering fractions in class is called LEG, L-E-G, which stands for less than half, equal to half, greater than half. So the first thing we're going to do is do our LEG chart. So I'm going to put any fractions that are less than half on this side, any fractions equal to half in the middle, any fractions greater than 1/2 on the end. Excuse me, on the end. So my first fraction is 5/6. My second fraction is 2/6. My third fraction is 4/6. They all have 6 in the denominator, so really it should be quite easy to compare these fractions. But I'm still going to use LEG, and let's think, what is half of the denominator 6? Half of 6 is 3. So 5/6, 5 is greater than 3, so 5/6 is greater than half. 2/6, 2 is less than 3, so 2/6 would be less than half. And 4/6, 4 is greater than 3, so 4/6 would also be greater than half. Now that I've sorted all of my fractions, I can say, well, 2/6 is the smallest because that's less than half. There are no fractions that are equal to half, and now I'm going to compare 5/6 and 4/6. Because they have the same denominator, I compare the numerators. 4/6 is smaller than 5/6, so 4/6 would be next. 5/6 is largest. If I wanted to put them on the number line, if this is half, or 3/6, then 2/6 would be somewhere about here. 4/6 would be about here. 5/6 would be about here. And you can see I could even put a dash here for 1/6, and I would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 equal pieces to get to the 1. Number 2, these fractions do not have the same denominator. So I'm definitely going to have to use my LEG strategy. Okay, I'll start with 3/5. Half of 5 is 2.5. So 3/5 goes in the greater than half category. 9/10. Well, I know half of 10 is 5, so 9/10 is definitely larger. 9/10. 1/4. I know that 1/4 would be like a quarter, or 25 cents. That's less than 50 cents, less than a half. And 5/12. Half of 12 is 6, so 5/12 is also less than half. Now I have two fractions in the less than half, two fractions in the greater than half. If I compare 1/4 and 5/12, I could say, 4 goes into 12, which means I could turn 4 into a fraction that's equivalent, that has 12 in the denominator. I know that 4 times 3 is 12, so 1 times 3 is 3/12. 3/12 is less than 5/12, therefore 1/4 must be less than 5/12. In the larger category, the greater than 1/2, I have 3/5 and 9/10. I know that 3/5 can also be turned into a new equivalent fraction that has 10 in the denominator. 5 times 2 is 10, so whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. 3 times 2 is 6. 6/10 is less than 9/10, therefore 3/5 is less than 9/10. You could always cross multiply as well and say, well, 4 times 5 is 20. 12 times 1 is 12, so I know 20 is larger, 5/12 is larger. 5 times 9 is 45. 3 times 10 is 30, therefore 9/10 is larger. Now, if I have to put these on the number line, I know that this would be a half right here, and 1/4 is exactly half of a half, so I'm going to put that first. Exactly half of a half. 5/12 is just a little bit less than 6/12, which is half, so I'll put 5/12 here. 3/5, well, that's just a little bit bigger than half, which is 2.5/5, so I'll put my 3/5 here, and I know 9/10 is almost a whole, so I'll put that here. So now I'm going to erase this so it's a little bit easier for you to see the fractions on my number line. And there we have them. Number 3. Again, I have 5 fractions that do not have the same denominator, so I'm definitely going to use my LEG strategy. I'm going to start with that 7/12. Well, in the last problem we said that 6 is half of 12, so 7/12 is greater than half. 1/2 is equal to half. 2/3, I know that half of 3 is 1.5, so that would be greater. 4/10 is less than half because half of 10 is 5. And 1/6 is also less than half because half of 6 is 3. So now let's look in the less than 1/2 column. I could cross multiply and say 10 times 1 is 10. 6 times 4 is 24. Therefore, 4/10 must be the larger fraction. I also knew that because 4/10 is pretty close to a half, which is 5/10, and 1/6 is not very close to half. So my smallest fraction will be 1/6, then 4/10. Next would come the equal to half category, which is 1/2. Finally, I have 2 fractions in this greater than half category, 7/12 and 2/3. Well, I could cross multiply, or I know that if I multiply 3 times 4, I get 12. And then if I multiply 2 times 4, I get 8. So this would be 8/12. Therefore, 2/3 is bigger than 7/12. If I cross multiply, just to double check, 12 times 2 is 24. 7 times 3 is 21. Yep, it looks like 7/12 would be the smaller fraction. So I have 7/12 followed by my fraction of 2/3. Okay, the first fraction I'm going to put on my number line is 1/2. That's the easiest. Then 1/6. If I divided this whole line into 6 equal pieces, that means each half would have about 3. So I could say here would be 1/3, here would be 1/3 of this half, which is each 1/6. So right about here is 1/6. 4/10 I know is just less than half, which is 5/10. Then 7/12. 7/12 would be just bigger than half because 6/12 is half. And then 2/3, if I had to divide this whole line up into thirds, 2/3 would probably be right around here. And there you have it. 4 practice problems at the bottom. Number 4, the answer is 9,263. Number 5, the answer is 10,121. Number 6, 8,210 minus 6,654. I cannot do 0 minus 4, so I have to borrow from the tens column. I'm going to take that 10 away, so now I have 10 ones minus 4 ones is 6 ones. I cannot do 0 minus 5, so I borrow from the hundreds. Now I have 10 tens minus 5 tens, 5 tens. I have 1 minus 6, which again I cannot do, so I must borrow. 11 minus 6 is 5. 7 minus 6 is 1. 1,556. 7,235 minus 5,906. I cannot do 5 minus 6, so I'm going to borrow. 15 minus 6 is 9. 2 minus 0 is 2. I cannot do 2 minus 9, so I must borrow. 12 minus 9 is 3. 6 minus 5 is 1. 1,329.